Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this live stream. First of all, audio check. Can you hear me well? Please let me know in the chat if there is any problem with the audio. Maybe a bit, but yeah, okay. So is the audio fine? No, the vacuum cleaner is not holding me hostage. Everything is fine. And okay, in the meanwhile, K-Ben, welcome. Sorry, Cipher, welcome. Ozzy Boganten, nice to see you. Gapast, thank you for coming. Sean BZ, welcome. Exact Chinese American, thank you for coming. Zigzag Ground Zero, great to see you here. Calavera, Robert Verlinden, Alexa Jurisic. Alexa, are you a lady? Because as you know, I have a soft spot for the ladies, particularly during the lives. Robert Verlinden, welcome. Milan S, welcome. Happiness consultant. That's a great job, to be honest. Thank you for coming. Michael VY, thank you for being here. John Reeves, great. Okay, Alexa, sorry. Your name seemed a lady, but okay. AK79, who's a member, welcome. Alan Bailey, long-time supporter, welcome. Ma, welcome. Okay, so a number of people is actually connecting. That's a great thing. That's a great thing. So in the meanwhile, while we wait for just a few people more to connect, we short update of the situation. Finally, the temperature in the UK are now more manageable, so I can do more of these, and we want to. And okay, so Otis has a sort of a problem coming into the lives, so I'm afraid we need to do without. Anyway, the situation is so I can do even more lives. As I said, as you know, I am in the middle of a relocation. It's probably mid-August that I will leave the UK for the foreseeable future. Not that I'm not planning to go back, but I will be based, or better to come back, but I will be based in Italy for some personal reasons. So, and that's the reason why I'm doing so many live streams, because it's just easier. I just physically don't have the time to make real videos. Live stream, I just need to do the research and present it. Video takes, with the production, takes forever. So what are we talking about tonight? So there is a piece of news, which is this, in the sense that the US government has paused, not withdrawn, not concluded, not stopped, just paused the supply of some particular weapon to Ukraine. Obviously, this will have some impact on the Ukrainian situation, and we will go through that quickly. But I think that there are a few more interesting considerations to do about why this is happening, and the entire configuration that the West, and particularly, but a bit all the world, but configuration that the production system that supports the military effort has taken in the United States, but also in the West and in general. So that's and I think it's even more important. This is something that I already covered many years ago on this channel. Occasionally, sometimes we touch this subject quite often, but it is. I think it's always important to discuss this, because you as taxpayers in your respective countries have the capability of influencing this kind of policies if you don't think that serve you best. So so it's something that is important to, from my point of view, it's important to understand, and it is not just because we are all sort of gearhead. No, it's not the right word. It is all military nerds, probably, but also because that's something that may have some impact in our daily lives. So I am using this article from the Bulgarian military to go through the news, but it's just to have a sort of a structure. It will be an open discussion. Okay, probably won't be as long as the previous live streams, but I think is definitely worth talking about. So just give me a second. Okay. So, Patriot missiles halted is U.S. ammo production breaking down. Pentagon halts Patriots F-16 missile shipments to Ukraine, citing low U.S. stockpile. Is United States ammo production in crisis? Explore the impact on global security. So the reason why this is happening is that or at least so we are told from U.S. officials, is that for some of these weapons, the United States don't have enough stores, doesn't have a reserve big enough to provide to Ukraine. Now, you have to understand that this may seem not the case. So, for example, consider something that is not involving here, but consider that there are almost 2,000 Abrams tanks in reserve in the United States. And one may ask, why half of these could not be shipped to Ukraine? That would surely be useful. Well, those reserves, those stores, the number of systems and weapons that are acquired are not acquired as spares, as a contingency reserve, but a small fraction of them could be. But in general, all the systems that are acquired on the basis of a specific requirement that is derived, calculating the potential consumption of systems for a specific scenario. So the number of Patriots batteries that the United States have in service is designed to cover X number of installations, or or a specific unit being deployed on some expeditionary force of a specific size, and so on. So the point is, if you pick one of those that are at the current moment are in the United States doing nothing, and ship them to Ukraine, then you risk that at some point, for some missions, you won't have the weapons. So what can be sent to Ukraine is the contingency. Then it is possible that after an analysis, what would be needed for low probability scenarios that are not very likely to happen, could also be shipped to Ukraine. But beyond that, there is no real availability of spare systems or spare rounds or spare munitions or anything else to be provided to another country. This is the reason why every time you buy anything from the United States, but the problem is the same. I mean, the situation is the same for European suppliers. I was saying, every time you decide to buy anything from these suppliers, it takes literally years. They don't have anything ready, and what is available is either obsolete stuff that is going to be decommissioned, and plenty of that went to Ukraine. But of modern systems that are in service, normally there is very little contingency. And by the way, even if you send the contingency, you have to rebuild the contingency. And basically, with all the stuff that the United States sent to Ukraine, they actually realized that they got to the point that they sent too much, basically. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, basically said, this is an example of America first. We need, before giving or presenting anything to other countries, we need to be sure that all our planning, all our requirements are covered. And this is a political statement, but there is a very practical reason why now they're starting to slow down, because they're starting to run out of contingency, and they're starting to run out of old stuff, or stuff that is going to be decommissioned. That one can be freely given, but as I said, it's old, even though in Ukraine it has been put to good use. But the modern stuff, and for example, the Patriots that we're discussing here, there is really a limited availability, and Ukraine already received a lot. So let's see a detailed list of what has been paused. Okay. The main thing is the Patriot air defense system, because basically it's the only thing that is keeping the Russian Air Force at bay, but it is also a system, the Patriot is also a system that turned out to be very effective against cruise missiles and drones. Not price appropriate in many cases, but very effective. It is also the only system that Ukraine has, at least in this stage of the war, that is capable of engaging the Russian ballistic missiles. That is the Iskander and the Kinzhal, which are now being used in very large numbers. In the Patriot PAC-3 is a specialized, and PAC-3 is a specific missile. It's the one that was depicted here on top, as a bit slimmer than the normal, and that's a kinetic hit to kill interceptor, which is pretty much the only weapon that Ukraine has that can engage these the Russian hypersonic systems, hypersonic missiles. It doesn't provide a very large coverage, in the sense that if the missile is attacking the battery or a point not far from the launcher, then the missile has some possibilities, has some probabilities to actually intercept the ballistic missile, but the coverage doesn't extend too much. But anyway, it's the only system. The European SAMP-T, of which one battery, which was, by the way, the Italian spare battery. So we Italians, because I'm Italian, my native country is Italy, we are down one battery to our requirements, and in fact there's been another one there's been ordered. In fact, another one has been ordered to MBDA, but is going to take, I think, 3 years before being delivered. So that's the kind of situation that you'll all end up. But I was saying the SAMP-T, which on the paper should have more or less the same performance of the Patriot, and potentially with a slightly shorter range, but probably even better kinematics overall, turned out to be not that effective. So fine against cruise missiles, fine against drones, totally incapable against any ballistic target. This is by far, the Patriot is by far the main system for Ukrainians, because it's the only thing that is defending their the areas behind the line of contact. Okay, the other element that is going to be delayed is 155 millimeter precision artillery shells. And this is a bit surprising, because we are talking the Excalibur system, which is a kit for the 155 round, which is basically adds GPS guidance. So the round becomes a medium accuracy weapon, which is quite useful. In the point, I'm quite surprised to see that in the list, because about 2 years ago, it turned out that the Russian, with their GPS jamming capabilities, pretty much made these targets, these rounds, almost ineffective, in the sense that their accuracy was totally degraded. These are weapons that have an accuracy of 90%, 85, 90%. It was degraded at less than 10%. So it's more, almost as much as an unguided system. So the point is, last time this weapon appeared in the sources, it was to say that the Ukrainians stopped using it. The fact that they're pausing now, they say that they're pausing, probably means that in the meanwhile, silently behind the scenes, these Excalibur kit have been updated with GPS receivers less prone to be jammed, or less prone to suffer from the GPS jamming, and this is and probably they started being used again. So it is a bit strange, and but I mean, I have no reason. This list is sort of an official list, so it is eventually they've been provided already. However, there are very little news that come. There are no news actually that come from the battlefield, in terms of videos or any witness, that showed these weapons being used. So I am inclined to think that they have that if they have updated them, this is still provided with very small numbers. Probably more important is the AGM 88 harm, which is, as many will know, a anti-radar missile. This is a weapon that is considered by many obsolete because the combination of stealth and high accuracy weapons make a dedicated weapon to attack enemies' radar probably redundant, and that's the reason why it is provided to Ukraine. It has been integrated on on ex-Soviet aircraft at the beginning of the war. It appeared relatively early in the war, and it can also be launched by the F-16s, but not by the Mirage 2000s. And it has obtained some success for Ukraine. I think no more than a couple of weeks ago, there were news that the AGM-88 arm actually managed to hit a Russian radar. However, this is another one of the weapons that is in the list where they are sort of effective at the beginning, then the opponent reacts, adapts, and they become way less effective. However, they are still in use today, and even though they are probably not a key system. What is more surprising is this one, JDAM kits. Because, just give me a second. Huh? Okay, because I want to see how 308 people connected. It's almost moving seeing this many people coming and to see me speaking. But anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what is more surprising, the most surprising kit is the JDAM kits. So the JDAM is basically a GPS and inertial kit that can be added to a dumb weapon, a dumb aircraft bomb, to transform it into a precision-guided weapon. The point about the JDAM kits is that they are one of these let's say high precision weapons, medium precision weapon, depends from the variant. There are also variants that are very accurate but different guidance system. But in general, independently from the type of guidance, the JDAM kits are a relatively cheap weapon to produce, and they are built in very large number. They can be built in thousands a month. Okay, so there should really be no shortage of these kind of systems. And yet, if the reason is the fact that there's no contingency available anymore, they stop providing them. That's the most surprising thing. I think that the United States had no shortage of JDAM kits, particularly the older kits, that maybe they're not as effective as the modern ones. They're more susceptible to GPS jamming, and the Russians are very good at doing so. But still, they have some utility because you can't jam everything everywhere all the time. So I'm really surprised that the United States are not providing that. And finally, another weapon that is being delayed is the AIM-120 AMRAAM, which I'm sure everybody knows is a medium to long range air-to-air weapon. It's more or less the Western standard. There's not much beside the AMRAAM. The Ukrainian have been provided even AMRAAM D, which is the latest version, which is much better than the previous variants. And because we know, because we have seen some pictures of Ukrainian F-16 using that. And they operate with the F-16s, which, well, in my opinion, have been a bit of a letdown, in the sense that their activity is now limited to chase drones and cruise missiles, with some success, definitely. The AIM-120 is one of the weapons that they use. There have been recently news of an F-16 shooting down an F-35 with an AIM-120, but no, it is technically impossible. And if it was true, it would have been all over the place. So I don't think that it was that the AIM-120 shot down any Russian aircraft. But it's definitely shut down many cruise missiles and many drones. I mean, this is in the context of rather underwhelming operations with the F-16s. I mean, this is a mission that I'm not saying that is easy. Actually, attacking a target that is flying low and fast is not that easy, particularly without the most modern systems that are available, the most modern sensors that are available to other aircraft. So it's not an easy mission, but should be a safe mission. And yet Ukrainian have lost so far at least 3 aircraft, which is probably, I imagine, it's my speculation, it is a sign that the training of these of the pilots has not been the training of the pilots has not been particularly accurate, or they have problems to adapting. It's difficult to say, but the fact is that, yeah, the effect of the F-16s on the general operation is really underwhelming. We're yet to see the Mirage 2000s. We'll see what they do. But yeah, it's I was thinking 2 years ago when we started discussing the F-16s that we would have seen the creation of a modern air force during the war, which was something remarkable, I thought. It doesn't seem to be happening, to be honest. But anyway, this is the situation. There's also another weapon that is missing from this list, and I would have expected it to be in, to be honest, which is the SDB, the small diameter bomb. I never remember the GBU 53. Maybe tell me in the chat, because I never remember the GBU number. But anyway, the small diameter bomb. The small diameter bomb has proved to be, in the air-launched variant, quite effective. It has been very not particularly sensitive to jamming, GPS jamming, but other forms of electronic jamming, turned out to be relatively accurate and I mean, powerful enough to execute several missions. For example, during the Kursk offensive, the first operational mission, the first air-to-ground missions of the F-16s were launch of SDBs, even because these can be launched from quite a large, quite a far, because they have quite a long range. So so that's a weapon that is quite important. It has been adapted also on the Soviet aircraft, and it's not in this list. I don't know if it is just it's been just overlooked, or the SDB is still being provided, but that is quite interesting. So this is the situation. As you can see, is a number of systems that have their importance and that are quite relevant for the Ukrainian effort. And what's going to be the effect? Well, in the specific case, it's difficult to say, but Ukraine has been in a downward spiral since the failure of the summer offensive in 2023. This is going to accelerate the spiral a little bit. That's what is happening. The quantity of European supplies has slightly increased in the last year, let's say. So the effect is not going to be as heavy as it would have been 2 years ago, for example. Overall, this kind of level of this kind of support is essential for Ukraine to keep fighting. So, I mean, is not going to cause a sudden collapse of the defenses, but it's just going to accelerate this downward spiral in which they are in. That would be interesting to cover, to be honest, because what exactly is happening, I came to some interesting conclusions after seeing a year more of war, which I didn't. If you remember, if you are long-time viewers, you will remember that a year and a half ago, I was convinced that the war was going to end very soon. I was wrong, unfortunately. That's one of the few cases in which I was going to be right. And but now I am sort of came to some conclusion on why the situation is going the way it is going, and why it is like this. So much for the news and the comments that we can do from a very technical perspective on the effect and what's going to happen on Ukraine. So if you allow me, just a quick pause, and then I will take a few questions. And after the questions, we'll move on with more. We'll move on to another few considerations that I think are quite important. Okay, let's take some questions. By the way, if someone actually dropped a super chat, apologies. I didn't see the chat running. I probably have missed. So thank you. Thank you anyway. So, Jim, the Russians are building tons of drones and dropping them down on all infrastructure now. This thing is done. It is very surprising. They are managing to produce every type of drone in general, but particularly Garan derivatives of the Shahed that now are much more modern. The Russians really developed them, but they're really capable of building in the hundreds every day. And this is, even if it is a simple and poor weapon, this is the effect will be heard. This is something we are going to discuss in a minute. Is Spain producing Patriot yet? I thought they were being set up for that. Yep, they are. I don't think they are done. They are ready yet. A lot of people talking about the situations in Iran, the so-called 12 days war. We talked about that already. Always talking about stupid nonsense of better technology wins. In a war between nation states, the only thing that matters is industrial power, which is actually connected with technology. So it is more complicated than this. Iran, Israel. Okay. Yeah, about 650 PAC-3 per year. That's 300 something interceptions. Yes, because they're often, not always, but often launched in couplets, which means 300, 400. And Ukrainians use lots, and Israeli needs to restock. 650 is not much then. Yeah, that's true. Russia said Mirage 2000 was used in the latest cruise missile drone strike. I didn't hear that. I'm learning this from you. Thank you for letting us know. Has Germany delivered its Taurus cruise missile? No, So, it's a particular story. So, the point is that there is zero possibility to use the Taurus missiles without the help of the Americans, because the intelligence is required for the targeting can only come from the Americans. The programming, the weapon also needs to be integrated in the aircraft that Ukraine has, because there's no aircraft that Ukraine is flying that could launch the Taurus. And it will probably need German personnel for the targeting. And the Russians said, if we see Taurus flying, rest assured that we are going to hit your German personnel, because we have the possibility of understanding where they will be. So the Germans apparently decided not to provide the missiles, but to provide to the Ukrainians the technology to build the missiles themselves, which is okay, maybe in 2-3 years, because it's wartime, so it will be done quickly, but that's what has happened. In the meanwhile, we have a super chat from where is it? Okay. Posmo, thank you. Those old F-16Bs had vastly inferior radar, as you knew. What specifically did you think the F-16 would be doing? Drop it JSOWs or something? No, I was thinking that the pilots would have been trained to operate a bit more according to the Western style. So start doing combined air operation, COMAO, small scale with 6, 8, 10 aircraft, but start doing this for example, hunting S400, or start hitting some, or doing maybe 100 kilometers penetration in the in the area of Belgorod to hit the logistical areas, because that is the kind of mission that the West is guaranteed that is going to provide. The West thinks that is going to make the difference and provide the superiority that is going to happen. No, they're using the aircraft as they would use any Soviet aircraft. And they're losing a lot of aircraft. So that's what leaves me underwhelmed by the F-16 operations. Okay, now let's move on and let's make a few considerations. Okay, I was reading a book some time ago, which is a book for the, let's say it's an introductory test for the U.S. Naval Academy for the officers, and one passage actually struck me. I found interesting was the fact that the author was saying we are too focused on technology. Many officers, many commanders, many people are responsible to the effectiveness or the planning of the forces, think that when there is a shortcoming of capabilities, their responsibility is filing a request for a new piece of technology, and that's it. And this is culturally what the Americans do. They rely heavily on high technology for all their activities. And it's working. And I'm not saying that it's not working, obviously. But there is, and when it's working beautifully. Pass me the word. There's nothing beautiful in destroying, in blowing up stuff, but it's working very well. When it's working very well. The problem, it's when it's not working, or is not working completely as expected. Because a consequence of relying on technology is the fact that the complexity that you're dealing with goes up and up and up and up. For any new technology, the length of the logistic chain that is necessary to create that piece of technology and make it, introduce it in service and keep it operational is longer and longer and longer. Normally we speak about costs, but costs are just a proxy, okay? The matter is never costs. If you find, at least not for a country like the United States, if they need anything, they find the money. The problem is the complexity. So to build an F-16, it takes at least 18 months, but potentially even more. That is, if you want to have one F-16 rolling out of the assembly line in Fort Worth, you need to have ordered some of the long lead components 18 months before. If you want one to roll out from Camera in Italy, which is the other assembly line, the assembly much fewer, but that's the other assembly line. The time is even longer, is more closer to 24 months, 2 years. Okay, and it is a time that is hardly compressible because because it's not just contractual, it's just stuff that needs to be done. It takes time to be done, and that's the result. I mean, there's surely taking an approach a bit less structured, let's say, you will probably end up compressing the time in case of need a little bit, but it's still a very long time. Compared with what was happening in the Second World War, where to build a B-29, it took a day or a bit longer, okay? And but that's not just the United States, it was also Germany, the Soviet Union, even the British, particularly with the aircraft, had similar capabilities. Today's it would be unthinkable, okay? So we are making a joke, not a joke, let's say a bet, that these very high technology operations are going to be successful always. I mean, we have already seen that against Iran they have been successful. We have probably overestimated the Iranians, me included, or there's also a possibility that they have chosen to just not engage, not to react, because they wanted to preserve their capabilities. But we have seen by the Israelis and the Americans an example of what this kind of technological superiority could do. The point is, how many missions like this would you do? I mean, how in a in a large scale confrontation with a near peer against Russia, or even worse against China, how many missions like this would you be capable of doing? How many missions like this would you be capable of doing without losing aircraft? And how complex would be replacing those aircraft and replacing eventually the people that are required for those aircraft? Because the complexity of the technology is not just to create the technology and maintain the technology. The tactics and let's say the actual use of this system is becoming more and more complex. The user interfaces are becoming simpler, but the complexity of what a pilot needs to know, or I don't know, a weapon system officers on board of a ship needs to know, it's increasing, is greatly increasing. And this means that the training time gets longer and people serve for less time. And so you understand that the effect of hitting a target, destroying a target, obtaining the desired end state is at the top of an enormous pyramid of people and resources, and they all need to go well, they all need to be combined together, and they all need to go well together to get that result. But the more the more complex they are, the more it is likely that the proverbial grain of sand in the cog could break everything. Now, nobody's stupid. There is a lot of resilience built in the system, whatever. But the general trend, it is like this. A few years ago, I made a video whose title was "The First Victim of High Technology War is High Technology War." At the time, my point was highly sophisticated weapons are expensive. They are not available in large numbers. So any confrontation that lasts more than a few weeks, few months, is going to revert back to lower technology progressively, because you will basically run out of all these complex systems. Today, I think I have a more complex vision, in the sense that the entire structure, the entire structure of I see the things in the way that I have described, in the sense that the effect is not just something that a military unit can obtain with relatively little help from the outside. It's something that is at the top or a very an enormous pyramid, which you can assimilate to a logistic chain, which includes people and resources, people and stuff. And if you don't have all of it, or almost all of it, it doesn't work. And well, the United States know this, and they have that's the reason, and that's the reason why they're trying to preserve what they have, because it's physically impossible to produce these large logistic chains. Now, this is with the current technology. It is possible to think of technologies that improve the production, even of these extremely complex things, and speed up the production and make it that available. There are already examples. British Aerospace, for the production line that are working on the GCAP, are going to use a series of futuristic technologies to improve this capability. Lockheed Martin already made some experiments. So it is. It's not that it's a problem that I am the only one seeing, and it is a problem well known. But I can't see all the stakeholders, all the stakeholders recognizing that this is a sort of a bet, that you are betting that that everything you're doing is going to work. And if it is not going but if this is not the case, and against an opponent like China, it may well be the case, and even against Russia is not a walk in the park, then there is the possibility that everything collapses in a sort of a singularity that ended up being like Ukraine. If there is a lesson that we can get from Ukraine, it is the fact that very high and complex technology will coexist in a prolonged and generalized clash. Very high technology will coexist with very old technologies, and all of these will have their own space. The fact that the United States almost has no artillery left, or very little artillery left, because they rely. That's the same for NATO as well, because they rely on air support. For example, is one of these dangers. Okay, the fact that the new tanks that are going to replace the Leopard series will end up costing 10 million apiece is staggering. You cannot give in the hands of a young soldier something that costs 10 million. You will have to train it for years to make sure that you're using it right and it's preserving it and it's capable of doing this. And if you're training it for years, it will be available for service for fewer years. And that's the point. So one thing that I think the Russians have understood, and the West is only starting to understand, but the inertia is such that they're not coming back. But one of the things that the Russians understood is that you need this mix of systems. You need high-end systems, very capable for some specific missions, and you need run-of-the-mill stuff for your everyday operations. And while in the West we have the high-end stuff, we don't have the run-of-the-mill. And while there are some military thinkers, that start thinking that maybe this could be the case, we should change approach, I start seeing some professionals, some experts, some analysts, let's say, doubting of this approach, of the current approach, and say maybe we need numbers, maybe we need more infantry, maybe we need more of simpler weapons or cheaper weapons. It's always a minority. It's always a minority. So that's the thing that it is behind this event. This event is the plus. The suspension of the help is not just the fact that there is not enough stuff. It is the fact that there can't be, at some point, you can't be. With this approach for the system, you're sure that you will run out pretty quickly of your supplies. And considering the level of losses that we've seen in the Ukrainian war, with the small armies and the small armed forces that exist in the West, you will also run out of men, most likely. Now, I am one of those that think that it's preposterous to think that Russia is going to invade Europe and come and attack NATO. It's not going to happen. But what is very likely to happen is a war in the Western Pacific with China, and it will be something more than simply China invading Taiwan. I believe it will be something more generalized. It will be a clash for the superiority in that half of the world. And that's good. And a situation like this, a clash between two nuclear powers. So it's by definition, the Chinese can't march on Washington, and the Americans can't march on Peking because on Beijing, actually, because as soon as they get close, nuclear weapons will start to fall, and we are all done. There's no point in discussing this anymore. So the point will be destroying the opponent's armed forces, bases, personnel, and industrial base to make it go back and return to a level where it is no longer a potential threat. Okay. And in that case, upon this consideration, I'm sort of voting for China. I didn't think so till a year ago. Today, I'm sort of voting for China in the sense that I think that they are more uh, they're well equipped to the best. They're better equipped to for a longer confrontation. And this is pretty much what I wanted to say. I don't know if it was interesting. I mean, this was just me rambling, but I think that it makes you think, and makes you think even when you vote. Uh, think of what is the approach of the people you are working, you are voting. Anyway, so let's take a few questions. Biggest issue USA NATO might have is going to be those rare earths. Chinese own a few critical ones like antimony and others. How are you going to build a missile ship aircraft with your titanium? This is probably referring to someone from Russia. But anyway, yes, that's an example of the complexity of the logistic chain that there is behind anything today. Um, look, this is a relatively stupid remote control for a light that I'm using now. No, it's the blue light that you see on the right. Okay, considering what was necessary to produce the plastic was produced from petrol. So behind this, there is in the oil industry. But the colors, there's a chemical of the keyboards. There is a chemical industry. The chips and the batteries inside. Batteries is rare earths. Chips is a very complex industry. So there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of steps in the logistic chain just to build something that we give for granted, like this. It is not sustainable. During a war, it is not sustainable. Something will go wrong. I feel like if any of the big three nations went to war with one another, logistic taxi strategy would be more important than equivalent. Would you agree? In the long term, yes. So if the first 2 months, 3 months, 4 months are not decisive in a way or another, yes, then it comes down to logistic taxes and strategy. Well, even at the beginning, they are important, no, but the American approach, particularly, is to have a technology that is better than anyone else, because this will sort everything out anyway. May not work. Sorry, not this one. How to solve the paradox where to have low cost, you have to build at scale, which itself has high cost to start manufacturing at scale? Seems like a common thread. It's not linear in the sense that the costs of building at scale highly sophisticated weapons, and for cost, I always say it's not a matter of money, it's a matter of resources that you and time and people. Then you have to sink into a system to have that system available to produce an effect. So if you use very highly sophisticated weapons to do so, these cost increases much faster than you're using simpler weapons. So it is easier. So I mean, it's not particularly a brilliant deduction. And what I mean is, you can easily scale and at a lower cost the production of relative simpler weapons than high technology weapons. Dumb ordnance that go from point A to point B is more functional than the high-tech stuff when things break due to some EMP hitting satellites. This is another question, and we are going to discuss this pretty soon, to be honest, in a video that I'm trying to make in this terrible time. But it is true. We are risking to get to the point of having some over-reliance on space-based assets, and space-based assets are probably less robust than we think. So exactly, I don't know. If it was for me, I would start building a way of communicating that is not too dependent from space-based assets. I think you have far deeper going social problems reflecting on the manufacturing and engineering capabilities more and more. Oh, yes, that's a possibility, in the sense that the technology at the end of the day is people. The technology is created by people at the end of the day, and creating the cultural base to be able to support this kind of production is definitely not easy. Takes decades in some cases. If World War III happens, would we still produce Abrams or go back to 50s design? No, probably we'll still produce Abrams, but simplified Abrams. You probably the armor will still be producible. All those complicated third generation thermal cameras, probably not, or not at scale. Seems like it's still the case for low-end stuff too. For instance, 155 shells cost too much because they are not made at scale. But I recall EU nations considering new assembly lines too costly. Yeah, that's one of the problems. Costly, or maybe, but also not really remunerative, in the sense that the margins on a relatively simple artillery round is not that big. So yeah. It makes it hard to cripple the entire system with targeting just a certain supply, but as stuff is so complex and dependent on dozen of supply, it doesn't make itself. That's true. That's exactly what we were discussing. Okay, this is off topic, I would say. Okay, I think we've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes. I thought it was I hope you enjoyed it. Was a bit simple live stream. And by the way, I start enjoying doing live streams because it's sort of speaking to friends, coming back and speaking to friends, going out speaking with friends. Maybe next time, rather than water, I will come with a beer, and I will tell you to come with a beer as well, if you like beers, if you can drink beer. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, or at least it was interesting. There will be more live stream. There is a piece of news that I want to cover, which is the delay of the FA-XX, the sixth generation aircraft for the US Navy, next time. And I'm trying to finishing a video for the next thing. Geostone dropped a super chat. Hi guys, how would you arm Iran air defense system? No idea. With the best possible thing is probably still S-400. But it's difficult to say in few words. Anyway, thank you for the super chat. Anyway, so thank you very much for watching, and see you the next time. Bye.